Imagine a flight of stealthy F-35s striking a target in Syria near the Turkish border. Imagine a salvo of hypersonic missiles coming out of nowhere, taking out some stealths in one lightning-fast attack. The missiles came from an S-400 SAM system, allegedly the deadliest such SAM system in existence today. Would such an attack even be realistic? Is S-400 the best long-range killer? And what makes a good SAM system in the first place? S-400 vehicles use scrambled data to communicate with each other. Otherwise, enemy could eavesdrop on their state. Basically, they use their own private data networks. But with a virtual private network, anyone can keep their internet data secure. NordVPN was kind enough to sponsor this video, and they're giving Binkov viewers a special offer. Go to nordvpn.com/Binkov to check it out. NordVPN will route your internet traffic through own secure servers and encrypt it, so no one can tell what you're browsing or what files you're sending or receiving. You can choose any of the 5,000 plus servers in 62 countries. You choose the country you're accessing the internet from. That can come in handy when bypassing some firewalls or accessing geo-locked content. NordVPN supports all the major platforms and allows peer-to-peer sharing. Bandwidth usage is unlimited and multiple connections are allowed. Click on the link in the video description, nordvpn.com/Binkov, and use the code Binkov for the special offer. Get 70% off NordVPN, only $3.49 per month, plus you get an additional month free. Check it out. Let's get back to S-400. How does one measure the quality and coverage of SAM systems radars? A SAM system needs to get precise data from the outside network. Regardless of whether we're talking about the US Patriot or Russian S-400, if the targets aren't already classified and tracked by the overall air defense network, the interception performance of either system will be poor if they have to do it all on their own. Still, some systems out there are better at it than the others, as they have their own acquisition radars. S-400, like many other systems, comes in regimental or battalion sets. That means a few fire batteries are in it, each containing a fire control radar and some launchers. But other units containing additional radars are present in the regiment, rarely at the battery level though. In S-400's case, that's primarily the acquisition radar. Patriot unit does not use a similar acquisition radar that's organic to it. Again, that doesn't mean data from the air defense network isn't fed to the Patriot unit, but it does make the Patriot SAM less self-sufficient. Of the similar class, medium to long-range ground-based SAMs currently in service, only other Russian systems and the Chinese SAM use similar role radars organic to the unit. Keep in mind, not all other long-range SAM systems are covered by this video, as there's not enough reliable data on them out in the public domain. Shipborne systems and SAMs that can't reach over 100 kilometers are also omitted. S-400's acquisition radar has a quite large array. Size can aid in resolution and sensitivity. It uses the S-band to search the skies, which is a compromise between precision and anti-stealth performance. Its maker claims anti-stealth range of the whole system is little over 90 miles, but doesn't provide the context. If, for example, the targeting radar was made to engage aircraft with a radar cross-section of 3 square meters at 400 kilometers, its reach against an object giving out a radar cross-section of 0.0014 square meters is likely to be just under 60 kilometers. That's because the targeting radar, unlike the acquisition one, uses X-band, which isn't that good against stealth. So it's quite possible the 90 miles or 150 kilometers claim was either for the S-band acquisition radar or simply that the figures are referring to something else. If indeed 60 kilometers was targeting radar's range, it would mean that regular missiles S-400 uses can't go farther than that distance and hope to hit a target like F-35. Then there's the new big missile S-400 uses. While it has ample range, the important thing here is that it likely has own active radar seeker in its nose. So once it gets close enough to the target, it may be able to lock onto it and guide itself the rest of the way. S-400 missiles are pretty big, and its radar array is likely many times larger and more powerful than an AMRAAM seeker had. But the issue there is that the targeting radar is still not going to track anything beyond 60 kilometers. Could other radars be used? In theory, yes. The acquisition radar may try tracking the stealth target. It wouldn't be as precise at it. but it may then send data to the targeting radar, which would then use that target location data and send course corrections to the missile in flight, and hope that the missile will fly close enough to that F-35 to somehow lock onto it. Even with all that, chances that precise enough tracking could be maintained at long ranges are slim. Medium ranges, such as 60 or 100 miles, may be possible though. And certainly if the plane happens to be showing its less stealthy sides, the ranges might increase. But are other SAM systems any better in anti-stealth regard? Not really. European SAMPT units use a single radar. It's less powerful, with the maker crediting it with detection range of fewer than 60 miles when acquiring targets on its own. Its missiles have less powerful seekers. US-made Patriot also uses a single radar for everything, though its radar band, size and power do allow for decent detection ranges. Patriot uses two main missile types. The large one is very similar to the basic missiles S-300 and S-400 use, in principle, only smaller. It would have the same issues due to the same guidance method. Patriot also uses smaller missiles, but their radar arrays are smaller and their range is fairly short. Chinese HQ-9 system does use a dedicated acquisition radar. Its missiles are not that much smaller than S-400's missiles. And they're all self-guided by own seeker heads. So HQ-9 and S-400 might be roughly of similar capability against stealth planes. Those slightly smaller sizes of radars might still lead to slightly worse performance of HQ-9 if technology levels are comparable. Russian S-350 uses smaller missiles of the same kind that S-400 can also use. And it has a dedicated UHF band acquisition radar, which is even better for anti-stealth work. It's one of rare SAM systems in existence which also uses 2 engagement radars per battery. But since the missiles are fairly short-ranged, it's still not likely to outdo the S-400 when it comes to engagement of an F-35. Of course, S-400 is famous for its long range. Indeed, the longest range missile has recently finally been put into service. We're talking about huge, heavy missiles here. The published ranges seem terrifying, but keep in mind, those ranges come from multiple sources and it's best not to compare them directly. They're likely not all referring to performance against the same types of aircraft. Maximum stated ranges are often not the ranges usable against fighter jets, and it's possible the 400-kilometer range for the big missile refers to reach against bigger and slower targets. S-400 units cover the airspace better than most other SAM units, because they have even more radars covering various roles. The basic engagement radar is there, of course, one per battery. It can be used for acquisition too, but it doesn't do as well in that role as Patriot's engagement radar, for example, due to the chosen radar band. Except when it comes to one thing: 360-degree coverage. The Patriot's multi-role radar is steerable, but only to 110 degrees in azimuth. It simply isn't meant to operate while rotating. Basically, it sits and covers a certain wedge area, both for acquisition and for targeting. Interesting case is the Polish purchase of Patriot units, where they use mini batteries inside what would otherwise be a regular battery. S-400's radar is also fixed when used for targeting, but in its acquisition mode it can operate while rotating all around. SAMPT radar is similar. It can do one quadrant targeting and acquisition in a full circle. On top of those, S-400 uses more gadgets, usually at the regimental level. There's another radar for early target acquisition, but because the big radar is optimized for very long range and partly anti-stealth work, it's not so good for very high or very low angle work. It can have trouble detecting incoming ballistic missiles from steep angles, for example. This is where the additional radar comes in, covering those angles better. Another benefit is that said radar is fairly compact, so it can be mounted on a specialized mast, which S-400 units usually have at a regimental level and sometimes even at the battery level. The mast itself is an option that can be used with the fire control radar as well, providing longer engagement range against very low flying targets. With the taller mast option, the radar could see a target flying 10 meters above ground from 40 kilometers away. No other SAM system of similar class today offers such option, and their targeting radars are confined to the trailer or at best roofs of trucks. Of course, setting up the mast and radar on top or taking it down takes 1 to 2 hours. This puts the battery radar at risk, as even after it's been turned off, the enemy fire could still find it for a fairly long period of time. Through the decades, NATO used both low-flying cruise missiles and terrain-hugging strike planes in much greater numbers than the Soviet Union and later Russia, so Russian SAMs simply chose to add those masts as an important option. A similar doctrinal difference explains the Russian focus on very short battery deployment times. S-400 and its Cold War predecessor took that down to just 5 minutes for the basic battery. During the same Cold War, Patriot battery was content to deploy or pack up within 60 minutes. Even today, the modern European SAM system, SAMPT, needs 45 minutes to deploy or pack up. Again, Russians felt they were at much greater threat from anti-radar missiles that NATO used, compared to the arsenal of similar weapons Soviets had back in the day. In general, the US saw their Patriot batteries as additional protection, covering their ground assets from the most likely strike direction, in case the fighter air cover failed. Hence the lack of various other radars and a fixed coverage. Russians had their S-300s as a part of the air defense forces, not the ground army, as they were tasked with building a protective wall against deep strikes into their motherland. Another important aspect of a SAM system is how many targets can it engage. That can be simultaneously, where the limiting factor is usually the targeting radar. Or the limit can be the number of missiles prepped for launch, if simultaneous interception isn't a factor. If the limit of the system is, say, guiding 12 missiles at once, then the 13th missile could not be fired for 2 minutes after the first salvo was fired. S-400 is usually officially credited with 12 missiles guided at up to 6 targets. There are some claims that more targets could be engaged, but those can't be substantiated. Official brochures for European SAMPT claim 10 targets attacked per radar. Chinese FD-2000 is marketed with 8 targets, as is Russian S-350. The current Patriot limit is unknown though. It may depend on the type of missiles used. If the big missiles without autonomous guidance are used, then the limit may be lower. If the smaller missiles with own terminal guidance are used, then its plausible numbers are comparable with the SAMPT system, for example. It may very well be that when using the big missile, which likely has to have active terminal guidance, the S-400 can guide more than 12 of such missiles to more than 6 targets. Same with using the small 9M96 missiles, which also have active guidance. What about the total number of missiles? An S-400 battery can have up to 12 active launchers. That amounts to 48 missiles in total, ready to fire. A Patriot battery can have up to 8 launchers. If only big missiles are used, that's up to 32 missiles. But if smaller, shorter range missiles are used, then many more can be present. If Patriot battery operated with just PAC-3 missiles as a fairly short-range system, it could in theory have 128 ready-to-fire missiles. SAMPT battery supports up to 6 launchers, with total being up to 48 missiles between them. Chinese HQ-9 data is scarce, but so far up to 8 launchers have been observed in a battery, for up to 32 missiles in total. Keep in mind the size of SAM units is not fixed. Oftentimes batteries operate with less than the maximum number of supported launchers. Indeed, when exported, both Patriot and S-400 are often operated with just 4 launchers. Still, it's very evident that the size of the missile, dictated by the need for a long range, prevents fielding a large number of missiles. A graph of basic declared ranges for each type, coupled with the total missile allowance, can be made. It can be observed that for the Patriot, missile count is very important. Since anti-ballistic missile role is quite important to the PAC-3 family of missiles, and large salvos of missiles are usually used there, focus on numbers becomes logical. S-400 is all about range, on the other hand, even though it holds its own in missile count as well. The graph omitted the smaller missile option for the S-400. If that option is exercised, 4 of those missiles could come in place of a big one, so each launcher could in theory carry 16, for a theoretical yet unlikely total within a battery of up to 192 missiles. Unlikely because some of the S-400's capabilities would be wasted if it used only short-ranged missiles. so it's more likely there would be only a fairly small number of such missiles per battery, perhaps 16 or 32, in addition to 28 to 40 large missiles. Those missiles themselves aren't that short-ranged, of course. Compared to Patriot PAC-3, they have a longer reach. They both utilize active radar guidance and mid-body gas thrusters for added maneuverability. But while the PAC-3 family is usually marketed as being tailored against ballistic missiles, the S-400's smaller missiles aren't, so it's unknown if they're similarly capable in that area. Reach of the missile is not everything. Another often overlooked aspect is SAM unit coverage, basically an area that the unit covers. That can be radar coverage, which can be made better with more radars inside a battery, or simply with multiple batteries in the same area. High-positioned radars also offer longer reach against low-flying targets. But also very importantly, launchers can in certain systems operate at great distances from their engagement radars. So the total coverage area of a battery is not best depicted visually as a circle, but more of a flower. Norwegian NASAMS has, for example, very big coverage in relation to its missile reach, thanks to its multiple engagement radars and the option of its launchers being positioned at great distances from them. Today's Patriot launcher groups can be positioned almost 20 miles from the engagement radars. 1980s variant had that distance at 6 miles. Today's SAMPT can position its launchers at a similar distance. S-400 communication arrays have a variety of options, but the most common ones suggest 15 and 30 km limits, with the additional limit of line of sight needed for the evidently millimeter wave communication. So it's likely the coverage of an S-400 battery is considerable. How lethal is S-400? That question can't be properly answered as there is no testing data released to the public. Various hit success rates released by the manufacturers are mostly meaningless here, as they can't be directly compared to data given for other systems by other manufacturers. And S-400, like its predecessor S-300, has never been tested in combat. Still, given that it's a fairly new system containing new technology, it's safe to say it's dangerous. While less maneuverable than smaller missiles, large missiles, such as the type S-400 uses, kill with their speed. Even at long ranges, they still retain enough velocity that the target may not track the incoming missile properly and maneuver in a timely manner. And even if it does maneuver, the large warhead makes the missile lethal even if it detonates away from the target. Indeed, at 30,000 feet up, where the air is thin and warhead fragments fly farther, a detonation of a 300-pound warhead can neutralize a plane from 200 or 300 yards away. Is S-400 suitable against a wide range of targets? Most certainly. With its family of missiles, some lethal due to their maneuverability, others due to their speed, it should find a tool for most situations. It has more additional options for radars than any other system, meaning more comprehensive radar coverage. All systems mentioned in this video have some capability against ballistic missiles. But that's outside the scope of the video, and the published range figures are again not directly comparable due to different target sets. But in general terms, a sort of dedicated radar for tracking ballistic missiles and very high-speed interceptor missile help. For situation attacks, a large number of interceptor missiles carried is also important, which is why newer Patriots have so many missiles. It's therefore plausible S-400 might do better in a scenario against a few medium-range ballistic missiles, while the Patriot might do better against short-range ballistic missiles and against multiple missile attacks. The Russian approach to S-400 was to make a system for everything. It offers possibilities most other SAMs don't. Want more launchers? You can get them. Want high-up radars? Sure. Want full self-sufficiency if the unit is severed from the network? Fine. Want very mobile cross-terrain vehicles? We got that option too. The downside to that approach is cost and complexity. Costs are another area that can't really be directly compared between countries, as various contracts rarely give out context, just what is included in those contracts. And it's very rare that the number of batteries is even clearly stated, or the degree of technology transfer, as most details about such transactions are classified. That being said, the cost of labor in Russia is cheaper than the cost of labor in the US or Europe. So it's very likely that a comparable S-400 is half or possibly even a third of the price a Patriot battery is. For a third party buying SAMs, that's a very good deal. For Russia or the US, which don't really have a choice, that doesn't matter as much. If S-400 was designed and built in the US, it would still cost 2 to 3 times as much to get a comparable system, just as the Patriot, if it was designed and built in Russia, would be 2 to 3 times cheaper. Notice the focus on the term comparable. In reality, those systems are not fully comparable, and all export contracts have their own peculiarities. With so many options, S-400 is bound to be quite expensive, as the contract examples do tend to show. And procurement cost is just part of the overall cost. The bigger a SAM system is, with more options, more launchers, etc., the bigger crew it's going to need for a given technology level. Bigger crews means more salaries, and bigger logistical needs on the battlefield. Patriot battery allegedly requires some 80 personnel for a 6-launcher unit. SAMPT allegedly needs just a few dozen for the same number of launchers, being a more limited system. S-400 numbers aren't published, but given all the options available, they could run over 100 personnel. And those big missiles in various editions require big and heavy vehicles. So the S-400 unit is demanding when it comes to transport. Where a Patriot battery could be airlifted by a dozen C-5 transport planes, an S-400 battery might need 18 similar planes. Larger and more numerous vehicles also require more fuel and maintenance, making S-400 somewhat less strategically mobile. When it comes to tactical mobility, S-400 again has options. While Patriot comes only on trucks and various trailers, S-400 components can be purchased to be used on trucks or on cross-country capable vehicles. Of course, no system is likely going to approach the tactical mobility or ballistic protection of S-300 VM, with its armored and tracked vehicles, capable of following a tank brigade on a battlefield if needed. But that system was always in a category of its own, a specialized niche system, not to be confused with the regular S-300 family. So, is the S-400 the best? Not in everything. There are more specialized systems out there, but if one wants everything and a kitchen sink in their SAM system, it is the most complete and well-rounded option out there, and certain stuff like the focus on the maximum range is something no other system offers right now. To sum it up, it probably is well worth the money it costs. Oh, and before you go, think about subscribing if you like my content. If you want to be notified of my upcoming videos, subscribing is not enough. You also have to click that bell-shaped notification icon. And if you're viewing Binkov on a phone, notifications from YouTube also need to be turned on. Well, that's it for now. Salutations! And remember, Binkov may talk about hypothetical wars, but only real peace can bring us all together.